I think that there's a way that we can, I think we need to hold on to the specificities of these different historical events, which are genuinely different. And there is an escalation, and it's not a competition, right? I mean, what the Nazis did was the first industrial scale, mass machinery, of mass death, right?
Yes.
And because I think every genocide is profoundly impacted by the technologies of its time, right? This was the first Fordist genocide, but that doesn't mean that it shouldn't be in conversation and in history with the previous genocides that informed so many aspects of it, right?
Yeah.
And the ways that genocide is feeding the current genocide, right? Which is also different, right? I mean, I think that there's this desire for things to be the same, which is really boring. I mean, first of all, we have a genocide convention precisely because there isn't just one genocide. And it allows us to identify commonalities across difference, right? And so that we can identify that annihilatory logic, which is absolutely a through line, in human history. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't like whether it's capitalized or not. I mean, what's dangerous is if it is exceptionalized, and that exceptionalization becomes the rationale for further exceptionalization, which it did, right? There's a reason why it needed to be exceptionalized. And the reason is multi-directional. Like you mentioned, the Allies. The Allies wanted it to be exceptional because if it wasn't, they'd have to look in the mirror at what Hitler learned from them, and then suddenly they're having to deal with their own genocidal histories and present, right? They don't want to do that. They want to come out, like you said, Matt, they want to come out the heroes, right? They want to come out cleaner than before, right? Which they did. They also want to pivot to the Cold War, which they also did. So that, that was, because there was also a lot of, like, the comparisons that were allowed were comparisons with Stalin, but that's a whole other
That's right.
But I feel like we're only, because so much of this history was, and so much of the scholarship that did draw these connections was suppressed, not part of Holocaust education. I don't even think we've begun to understand the psychology of why there was that need for that kind of exceptionalism and how that manifests today in this, like what you were talking about earlier, Daniel, about like, what is this drive to fulfill every single anti-Semitic dangerous stereotype? Like, it's almost like a death drive that we're seeing now. And it's terrifying. It doesn't just affect them, it affects every Jew in the world, right? If you're fulfilling out in the open. And I think it has something to do, and this is sort of a tricky thing to talk about, but if we understand that European fascism in the 1930s, 40s is colonialism coming to the heart of Europe and inflicted on people who saw themselves as white, or were sort of on that sort of border between white and non-white, right? And it also depends on which Jews we're talking about, right? Different shtetl Jews, different, than rich,
city
German,
Jews.
Austrian, city Jews, And I think for those folks, who, as we know, are the architects of Zionism, there's a lot of overlap there. Yeah. There was something about being treated as Black, right? That was a particular kind of humiliation, right? And it's a humiliation that has been metabolized as equality. Justice is us being able to be as fucking racist and genocidal as you white people were. That's why I say in the book that, in Israel, the mantle of whiteness is passed on to the Jews and called reparations. And what's the whitest thing you can possibly do?
Genocide. Ethnic cleansing, and the destruction of indigenous peoples.
And as we joked on the podcast before, that the extra bonus privilege of getting to Hannibal directive ourselves. It's like, it's like, why should everyone else get to kill Jews? Now we get to order the killing of Jews under dark circumstances.
Doing anti-Semitism is the highest level of whiteness that you can attain. So,
and there's a kind of a I dare you element to all of this ways in which we're just kind of like, there is this fulfilling of all these stereotypes. It's like, I dare you to say the thing,
Rabbi Shmuley did it in his Purim costume. He couldn't wait to dress up as what he thought Candace Owens' idea is of a stereotypical Jew. And in so doing, he gave rise to his imagination of her imagination. Now, I'm certain that her imagination of a stereotypical Jew maybe isn't a place I'd want to hang out. But his imagination of her imagination was this grotesque, hook-nosed, payist.
Yeah.
And so here's the
he had a shirt on that said like money, or it was just like he's,
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Do you know who Rabbi Shmuley Boteach is?
Unfortunately, I do.
Yeah. So
I haven't seen this latest chapter in his long history.
This is back
in many chapters.
Back in the spring on Purim, he dressed up and put it on Twitter as his idea of an anti-Semite's idea of a typical Jew. And it's basically a nightmare version of himself. Right. And it was like a furry costume. It was like he's getting to live through the imagined id of someone else who hates him. It was incredible.
Is this the ultimate way to prove that you're safe, or that you're free, that you fulfill the worst stereotypes and you're still okay? What is going on?
I like to imagine what it is it's trying to portray the anti-Semites version of a Jew, in which you are, looking at a literal demon, right?
Yeah.
And say like, and then say, this is what everyone is doing to us. They are turning us into this being. When they see us, when they talk to us, when they tell us that Israel is doing crimes, this is the image that this is the person that they're talking to. It's a way of almost delegitimizing someone's criticism by saying, well, no, in your mind, we are, you are seeing someone with horns and a big hooked nose and a tail, and almost like laughing at the idea. I just see it as delegitimization of criticism. It's a way of like, you're trying to mock someone. Now, in the case of Candace Owens, she might actually believe some really anti-Semitic things. But this is, this kind of caricature of anyone who speaks out against Israel as being an anti-Semite. It's almost like a way of trying to own them via painting them as being insane.
Well, I think
there's a lot of painting others as being insane by doing the most insane act you can think of, and it.
Well, it's trying to do in some ways what gangster rappers were doing in the early 90s, like being like, oh, you're so scared of us, you made us this way, and now you're going to judge us for it. A group like NWA was trolling the country in a sense, but also rebuking the country,
right?
And both celebrating and lamenting the stereotypes that they've been forced to live inside of. But for me, like, now when you've got fucking war pigs like Shmuley and people pulling this same kind of maneuver, being like, "Hi, I know what you think of me." It's
the ultimate power trip is the point. It's it's an idea. I dare you.
It is an I dare you.
The reason why, there are various sort of theories around what made the Holocaust different, right? Than when people are rationalizing why it deserves to be seen in a category of its own. And, it's not the number of people, because indigenous people in the Americas, get that one, right?
Yeah. And it's certainly not the duration of it, because it was relatively quick.
And one of the things that you hear is this assimilation, right? They were so assimilated, right? And that is quite unique.
That is.
But that is, I think, what we're talking about in a way, right? Like when I say, there's a humiliation in thinking you were in the club and then getting kicked out of the club.
Yes.
Right? And so how do you metabolize that humiliation? Because humiliation is a very dangerous thing, right? Especially humiliated men are very, very dangerous. And there's a parallel with, Hindu nationalism in India. As many people have pointed out, right? There's a humiliation of colonialism, particularly for men, who are sort of demoted, right? In the sort of the hierarchy of the family. And I think that there's a ferocity that comes back to prove, that you are in charge. And I don't think you can understand Israeli society without sort of contending with injured masculinity as a driving force.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, you look at the model of the new Jew, and you can't help but seeing it only existing in opposition to the weak diasporic Jew, and you can only see it as like, we will no longer be humiliated by having allergies and reading books about us having sex with livers
and eczema and sunburns, and of course, what was October 7th but a huge humiliation?
Yes,
and that's why that's why it became this fount of morbid fantasy. I mean, they had to invent more and more outlandish atrocities. It's not enough to say we got shocked and hurt and killed and scared on that day. Our bubble got burst and we looked weak.
Which is what Nasrallah said, and they'll never forgive him for that. Right?
No, absolutely
that they were revealed, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Thank you so much for watching that. Please like and subscribe, and please support us. Patreon.com/badhasbara or go to badhasbara.com.